Hello team, welcome back. Welcome to the Docker for DevOps training, and in this particular lecture we are going to learn how can we install the Docker on Mac machine. So very first we will learn the Mac Docker editions for the Mac OS, and then we will see how we can install the Docker on Mac. So we are going to discuss the Docker Mac editions first. So what minimum Mac OS version is required to run the Docker? So Docker has provided the native support for the Mac OS, and if you want to run the Docker on your Mac machine, the minimum version of the Mac OS is required Yosemite 10.10.4. If you are using this particular version or higher version to this 10.10.4, then you can execute the Docker natively on your Mac OS. But if you are using your Mac machine is older than 8 to 10 years and which have the version lower than 10.10.4, then you need to install the Mac Toolbox on your machine. Docker Toolbox is basically supported Snow Leopard, Lion and Mountain Lion, right? So basically Snow Leopard, Lion and Mountain Lion are the basically Mac OS version which lie between 10.6.10.8. So if you are using the Mac OS version which is lower than 10.10.4 and which is lying between 10.6 to 10.8, then you can install the Docker Toolbox. But that doesn't mean that native Docker will support on your operating system. Native Docker will only support on your operating system if you are using minimum Mac version 10.10.4 or higher version of the Mac. Now we will see how can we install the Docker on Mac machine. For this we need to go to the website www.store.docker.com. We have visited in the last lecture when we are trying to install the Docker on Windows machine. So let's go to the www.store.docker.com. So you can see we are on store.docker.com, and in this particular course we are going with the Docker Community Editions. So we will click the Docker Community Edition link. It will open the available Docker Community Edition versions. The very first link we are getting for the Docker Community Edition for the Mac. We will click this particular link, and over here it is asking me to log in to my Docker account. If you don't have any account, then you need to sign up and then create your account, but I have my account, so I will directly log in to my account. So you can see I have logged in my account. So my name is being displayed over here, and once I will click the link, it will show me some option, my profile, my content, billing and logout link. I close this, and over here I am getting a link to get Docker. I will simply click this link to download the Docker setup on my Mac machine. So once I will click it, you will get a simple downloading DMG image over here. It will take some time to download the Docker setup on my machine. But if you are using the Mac machine which is earlier to Yosemite 10.10.3, then you need to click this particular link, Docker Toolbox. This will render you on some other page where you will get a link to download the Docker Toolbox for the Mac. So over here we are getting a link, get Docker Toolbox for the Mac. You need to click this link to download the Docker Toolbox setup on your Mac machine, and over here we are getting the install link to install instruction. I will click this link, and over here we are getting the complete install instruction to install the Docker Toolbox on your Mac machine. As my Mac machine is 10.13.4, which is earlier to 10.10.3, sorry, which is latest to 10.10.4, so I can directly run the Docker on my machine, right? So that I downloaded the Docker image directly on my machine from this particular link. We are fast forwarding this video so that until the downloading will finish. The download process is done and we can see we have a docker.dmg file which have the size 523.1 MB, right? So to install this particular Docker setup on a Mac machine, we need to click this. It will open the pop-up like this, opening the docker.dmg. It will verify the prerequisite as per the installation process and open a pop-up like this, which is a normal installation process in the Mac machines. We need to drop this particular Docker into applications, right, which is done. Now I will open the applications and over here I am getting a Docker icon which is still being processed. I will double click this icon. So it is saying welcome to the Docker for Mac. We are warmly happy to have you. Click on next, click on OK. It will ask you for your root user password. I'll provide my password. Click OK and a setup should be running, right? We can see a Docker icon is being presented over here and we are getting Docker is starting, right? A Docker icon will be present on your menu bar like this. Once you will click it, it will say you Docker is starting. So we have to wait until this particular yellow button will be green. Now you can see this is green and it is saying Docker is running, right? Now we will click this link about the Docker to get the information. And it is saying version 18.06.1 CE Mac 73. This is the version which is running on your machine, right? I'll simply close it and go to my browser, right? So we have downloaded the Docker Community Edition for the Mac. Now we need to learn how we can amend some preferences or setting on my machine. After that, we will see a code editor to edit some code files on your Mac machine. So basically why we need the code editor to edit the code files on my Mac machine, this is because in the coming lectures we are going to learn how we can deploy and implement the Docker files and the native codes to execute the Docker. For that we need some kind of editor, so we will download and install some code editor which work fine with the Docker. To edit the preferences, I will go to my Docker icon and click it. And over here, I am getting a link preferences. I simply click this particular link. It will open the Docker preferences. Over here, I am getting the general preferences like start Docker when you log in. If you check out this code, this particular link, then it will not start the Docker when you will log in. But if you will keep this checked, then every time you will log in on your Mac machine, the Docker will start automatically. The second is about automatically check for the updates. It will automatically check for the updates of the Docker Community Edition and remind you whenever it will have the new update for you. Third one is about include VM in time machine backups. We are not going to include any VM in the time machine backups, so by default this will be unchecked. Fourth is securely store Docker logins on Mac OS keychain, right? So it will basically use your root user credential to log in on the Docker. Send users notification. So whenever you will get the timely notification of the uses of your resources which Docker will use on your machine. Second one is about the file sharing. These kind of options you will get. We in the coming lectures we will learn about some kind of bind mounting or volume binding, right? So we will learn about these things over there. This is about the disk. So it means 2.4 GB disk it will use on your machine. It doesn't mean that it will simply use the 2.4 GB on your machine. It means at max Docker can use this much of machine on your disk. Once we will go on advance, it is saying Docker will use 2 CPUs and 2 GB RAM and it will use 1 gigabyte as a swap memory. What does it mean? If you want, you have the more resources on your machine, you can increase it up to any extent. Like I can increase it up to 4, and to apply the changes, you simply need to click apply and restart changes. When I'm setting it from 2 to 4 GB, it doesn't mean that Docker will consume this memory or Docker will preserve this memory on your machine. It means at max, Docker can use 4 GB RAM of your machine. But if some other process requires this particular memory to execute on your machine, then Docker will provide that memory to that particular process as well. By default, we will keep it 2, right? And second one is proxy. We will learn about these things in the coming lectures. Third is daemon threads, and for the Kubernetes. So we will learn about these things in the coming tutorials. This is the setup how Docker can be run on your Mac machine. If you want, you can open the terminal. Right over here it is my terminal, and by the command docker version, you can verify the Docker version on your machine. Once I will click the Docker version, it is returning me client version 18.06.1 CE Community Edition, API version 31.38, Go version, git commit is this, build is this, and many more details. So by this command, it confirms like Docker is running on my machine. Suppose if I will stop my Docker, it is say restart Docker. So it will take some time to restart, and in between I will execute the command docker version, right? So it is not returning you the server details. See, it is just returning you the client details. So it means Docker is running server client model on my Mac machine. Because Mac OS doesn't support Docker natively, so that Docker is running in the client server model on my Mac machine. When it is saying the server, in that mean Docker basically is creating a very tiny Linux VM on machine to execute the processes, which is Docker is calling the server, right? So you can say again Docker is up and running. If I will again execute the command docker version, it will return you the client and server ID. See, and it is in the server, it is clearly saying the OS type is Linux AMD 64, right? And it is defining the time as well. So basically, Docker on the machine, on the Mac machine, is running in client and server architecture, where the client is the Docker Mac machine and server is Docker basically internally running a Linux VM on your machine to execute the container processes. Now we will learn about next part, which is Docker or some code editor. So I am going to use the code editor Visual Studio. You need to type Visual Studio on your Google, click out the first link, and it will ask you to download. So over here I am getting download for the Mac. So I am going to download Community Edition. No thanks. Right over here I am getting a link, View Visual Studio. I click this link, and over here I am getting a link download. I will click this link, and it will land you on a page code editing redefine code.visualstudio.com. I will click this link. It will start download process on your machine. See, 73.3 MB code MB file will be downloaded on your machine. So we have to wait until the download process will complete. So we can see a 77 MB zip file is downloaded. We need to unzip it. Right? Once you will double click it, it will expand the zip file. Right? And we are getting the executable file over here. I need to double click this file. And Visual Code setup will start. See, I need to open it as I didn't download it from the Mac applications, simply close it. Once you will open that, a Visual Studio will open on your machine. See, this is the UI of the Visual Studio, right? So this is just a code editor, right, which we can use to edit a code of different scripting, right? So if you are a Python guy, you can simply write Python code over here. If you are a Groovy guy, then simply you can write down the Groovy code here. You can write down the Java code here, C Sharp, VVNet, any code can be done over here, right? So Visual Studio provide a very good support for the Linux, for the Docker native commands, so that I downloaded it. If you will go on the extensions over here, so over here you are getting a different kind of extension which you can install on your machine. So suppose if you want to install the Python extension, you simply click this particular link and it will install the Python extension on your machine. So right now totally 1608445 download was done of this particular extension. So we are getting the Python extension is being downloaded. So on the same way, we can download the Docker extension as well, which will help us to run some Docker files on our local machines, right? So over here I will type Docker and I will get a Docker extensions. So this is the start one. I will simply click it and it has a many more installation. The later one have some lower installation. So I will click the first one and install it. Right? So it will take a few seconds to install the complete Docker extension on your machine. So this is downloading the different kind of extension. And you can see the both extension are being enabled, right? If you want to disable them, you disable them by this link. If you want to uninstall them, you can uninstall the extension anytime, right? So if over here you will create a new file, like, and you name it some kind of file which is like Docker file, you name it something like Docker file. See, I name it Docker file. Save as Docker file. So I'll get a Docker icon over here, right? It is basically by default accepting it as a Docker file. So I can write down the Docker native codes over here, which we will learn in the few coming lectures in the same course, right? So this is the way how basically you can install different kind of editors for your Docker. So we have seen so many things in this particular course. We have seen how can we basically download, what kind of versions is available for the Mac OS, how can we install the Docker on the Mac OS, how can we change the preferences, and how we can download and configure the native code editor tools for the Docker. This is all about this particular lecture. In the coming lecture, we will learn how we can set up a cloud machine to execute the Docker on the cloud machines. Thank you guys. We will see you in the next lecture.